All right, today we're going to talk about suffering. There are several different types of suffering. So, the suffering that is most people refer to is like natural disasters, deformities, diseases, and stuff. So, let me explain something about that type of suffering. In Genesis, that Adam and Eve decided to take a bite of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But that basically was saying was that introducing sin into the world, telling God to go away. Whenever they did that, God takes our free will very seriously, decided to take a step back, and in the distance of Him stepping back from us, chaos filled the gap. I think I've explained this before, but for some people who don't understand what that means, is that God is being itself, meaning that when He does take a step back from His creation, it allows for unnatural things to occur, and not supernatural things, unnatural things to occur. Disease, earth, weather type climate, uh, disease, climate change, deformities, mutations, those type of things fill the gaps whenever God took a step back. That's one type of suffering. The more popular type of suffering is the one that is usually inflicted on one another. That is us not loving one another or respecting one another, which is the second greatest commandment that God has given us. The first one being love the God with all your heart, love and worship God with all your heart and soul and strength. That suffering that is lateral is usually ensued to violence, um, murder, assault, uh, stealing, lying, cheating. That's suffering in itself. Not only does it cause another person to suffer when you do those type of things, you actually inflict suffering on yourself, because what you're doing is devaluing another person. And when you devalue another person, you devalue yourself. Think about that. That means that you don't take the book of Genesis very seriously, because God made us in His image, meaning that He gave us innate intrinsic value. Now, I hear a lot of people say, we don't need God to give ourselves value. Ultimately, you do. You need something outside of being to give you value. You need a hierarchy, so to speak, a being outside of your dimensions to give you value. That's God. Now, you can say you're the greatest, you're the greatest, you're the greatest, but that doesn't mean you are. Something has to define what your greatness is, your value is outside of space time dimension. That's God. So when you devalue another human being, you're basically telling or communicating to God that God made a mistake when He created that being. That's any type of sin that you commit against somebody, including yourself. Two things with that. First of all, God does not make mistakes, and God doesn't make trash. So when you devalue another human being, you are committing an evil act. That's what you're communicating whenever you are devaluing another human being. The other types of suffering is what I call tests and trials. Uh, they may sound like the same thing, but let me break it down a little further for you. Tests would be God placing you in situations or circumstances that help you grow, that gives you a chance to develop, uh, maybe to get your attention, even to the point of teaching you something. He wants you to go a certain direction. Those are tests. They won't cause you. They're not. They're not placing you in situations for you to necessarily fail. God is not testing you to go to a girl's house that you are attracted to see if you're strong enough to resist her. That's not a test. A test would be something like you pass by a person you don't like who has a flat tire, and you have the tools to help them to fix that situation. And instead, you make an excuse for not helping them, like they didn't do something for you the other day or whatever the case may be, and you continue driving. Well, that's a test you failed. You had the opportunity to help somebody and maybe change someone's life, and you didn't do that. See, that's a test. Now, trials are different. Usually, trials ensue something with Satan. Him being the accuser, he accuses you of something, tempts you into a situation where you know you're going to fail. That's usually the cases of, you know, you can handle, especially with addicts, you can just handle one more time. You can just take one more hit. You can do this and you'll be fine. Remember, you're much stronger than you are before. This is something I deal with. since I'm an addict. It's always been the case of just one more time, this is the last time, or just get a little bit of taste just to taper off from the cravings. And no, that's just Satan accusing you of always being an addict, or accusing me of always being an addict. See, those tests are set you up to fail. That's not God. But the interesting part that about that is that when you pass that test, God can use that test to help you grow. That can be your testimony. Even those type of trials can develop you in a way, but those are not from God. When I am asked about suffering from some of my peers, I try to get them to explain or communicate to me or reveal to what type of suffering they're talking about, because there are several types of suffering. Some are good, some are bad. But not all suffering is bad. But there's suffering that helps you grow, and then there's suffering that comes about from us not putting our faith in God, and there's suffering that we inflict on ourselves. When it comes to suffering, you have to understand that there is a reason why you suffer. Things don't arbitrarily happen. I know people say life is lifing, but that's not the case. The things that I just covered are probably, or most likely, one of those categories is the reason why you're suffering or going through suffering. So I want you to keep this in mind. Romans 8:28, God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. So that means God can use all that for your good and his. So keep that in mind when you feel like life is lifing a little too much.